Hello, everyone. I came across this video, and it's a talk radio show. Chris O'Brien is the guest. Simeon and I met Chris O'Brien when we lived in Crestone before, over 17 years ago, and I haven't really had any contact with him since. This particular talk show, like all talk shows, is a lot of chat. They're chatting about this and they're chatting about that. So I didn't want to just post the video, but I found a section of it that I felt was pure gold for anyone interested in the whole dynamic of this sacred valley, which is my reason for returning here, and the work with the sacred on and crest in the stone, the crown chakra of the Ascension Temple, and all of that. And I feel that this particular part is very germane to that, I guess you would say. He doesn't get into those specifics, of course, but the areas he touches upon allow us to see the uniqueness of this place from a physical, electromagnetic, electrical, supernal energy of this planet. It is quite a unique place, and so it then fits into the picture better as to why it would be chosen or self-chosen to be what it is. That is, when I say self-chosen, I mean from natural location and energies of this region. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it had those natural qualities, but then I think it was by the ultra architects brought into the picture to form this ascension portal for the planet. Again, as I've said in many of videos, we're not talking about the chakras of the planet. Those are within the planet. When I say a ascension grid, it's a crown chakra, the ascension grid, I'm talking about a specific grid that works to develop and complete the ascension of this planet. So that said, I'm going to play you just the part here that I feel is so germane to understanding this valley. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's see if it works here.
Speaking of drawing things together and finding commonalities, there are so many different kinds of phenomena in the San Luis Valley. What do you think the commonalities are there? Why so much odd activity across so many different forms of the paranormal in one place?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, and I've done quite a bit of thinking about this, and I've come up with a formula. Basically, it's got 5 different points in it, and if you have a place that has an exalted tradition with the natives there, native indigenous people, Native Americans, in the case of the San Luis Valley, of sacredness. If you have a tradition of sacredness and it's a place that was shared by different groups, in other words, not one group had dominion over the place. The 13 different Indian tribes overlap there. It's the only place in the country that 3 major regional groups of Indians co-inhabited. So you had the Great Plains Indians, your nomadic, mountainous, the Utes and the Paiutes, the Great Basin Indians, and you had the Southwestern Indians, the Dene, some of the Southwestern tribes, the Hopi and Zuni. They all peacefully coexisted there. Nobody lived there year-round. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be at 20 below with in a teepee and moccasins and loincloth. So they did sacred hunting there. They did vision quests. It's the location of the sacred mountain of the east to the Dene. Blanca Peak is considered the place where all thought originates. That's one thing. If they also have traditions of flying shields, flying seed pods, sort of aerial phenomenon that's in their myths and legends, That's an important little add-on ingredient. If you have unusual geophysical properties there, the San Luis Valley, because it has all these alternating layers of water and clay, actually creates gravitic lows. You weigh less in the San Luis Valley than you do outside of the valley. So Jenny Craig should have her main headquarters there.
Yeah, I'm gonna move.
You also have, and this may be an important one, because this one I see here in the Sedona area where I am currently living here in Arizona. You also have close proximity in the Earth's magnetic field between maximum and minimum field strength. So if you look at a grid of the Earth's magnetic field, there's pockets of higher strength, field strength in the magnetic field, and there's pockets of minimum field strength. And there's like an aeromagnetic map will have a color gradation going from dark purple to light blue, let's say. And what's interesting in the San Luis Valley is you have minimum and maximum field strength in close proximity to one another. And in those areas in between, it's like looking at a topo map of a cliff face. The lines indicating altitude are extremely close together. And you see that same thing in the variations in field strength, where it goes from maximum to minimum in such a short distance. Along those seams, between minimum and maximum field strength, is where we see most of our UFO activity, interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another, I think, important part, unusual geophysical properties. And of course, the military has a presence, and generally is trying to expand that presence into the area. So just to the east of the San Luis Valley, you have the largest low-level flight training military operations area in the country. We even rent the airspace out to the Israelis, the Germans, so they can train their pilots. And it's restricted flight. You have to have permission while you're in the air to fly through that area below, I think, 6,000 feet, above the ground. It's a low-level military flight training area. And they're trying to expand that out into the valley. They're trying to introduce laser-guided bombing, fields and stuff along the border. There's the before mentioned underground facilities. There may be as many as 3 or 4 of them between Dulce and Trinidad. Dulce, New Mexico is west of the valley, right on the border. From the actual edge of the valley, it's only about 40 miles away, 50 miles. And then if you go from Dulce to the east along the border to Trinidad, there's probably upwards of 3 or 4 different facilities there. Everybody's always, Dulce is the wonderful red herring. Everybody's always looking there when the real activity is going on further to the east in terms of underground presence by the military. So those are the 5 things that if you have those 5 things in your region, chances are you have a absolute gold mine of unbelievable variety and intensity of unusual phenomenal events.
I don't know that I've ever heard of any area with all of those aspects all brought together into one place. And so you've got a hotbed, is what you've got. You can't help but have strange activity going on in an area like that. And speaking of strange, I want to ask you about these underground dwellers in the area. We'll have to ask about that when we come back. Christopher O'Brien is my guest tonight, and I'm Heather Wade. We'll be right back. I guarantee you do not want to miss the rest of this program. Well, Christopher O'Brien is my guest tonight, and he has spent 10 years investigating the mysterious valley, the San Luis Valley. And I want to bring him back to the program now and really start getting into some of this strange phenomena. I mean, we've got into the theory of why this area has such strange phenomena. We've gotten into you being threatened and touched on some things. But one thing I found in doing a little bit of research about you was these underground dwellers that are mentioned in one of your books. Who are the underground dwellers exactly?
Well, it gets into Native American mythology. The Southwestern Indians, especially, have a tradition of the Sipa Pulima, or the place of emergence. And Interestingly enough, now that I'm in Arizona and I'm actually a guide, I take private tours up to Grand Canyon and look across from the national park over to the confluence where the Little Colorado meets the Colorado. That's supposedly the location of a vast underground city that's inhabited by ant people who keep it ready for the Indians to go underground and be saved and protected when the earth is ready to cleanse itself. And after the earth cleanses itself, they reemerge and repopulate North and South America. You have a similar tradition in other areas around the Southwest, including the San Luis Valley. The Tewa Indians in the northern Rio Grande region and the northern Pueblo Indians consider the San Luis Lakes as their place of emergence, their entrance point into an underground complex. And the Great Sand Dunes, interestingly enough, are right there. And it's interesting to note that the area between Dollar Lake is the closest that I've come to actually identifying a specific spot in the valley. But between Dollar Lake and about the 7-8 miles to the Great Sand Dunes are some of the oldest known remnants of humans in North America. There's a very famous archaeological dig there called the Cattle Guard site, which the Smithsonian has been patiently digging for over 40 years. They found incredible Clovis points and mastodon skeletons, and there's evidence that humans have been in that particular part of the valley for at least 13,000 years, and maybe even earlier. And then just south of there is where Snippy the Horse case occurred, just about 10 miles away. So it's part of the tradition there that there's underground dwellers there, and that's more of an ancient sort of mythical or legendary presence. In the same area of the Sangres, as I mentioned prior, there have been rumors for decades of military activity, planes entering and leaving the mountainsides. UFOs have been seen going directly into Middle Creek Hill, and then objects are seen shooting back out. I've had reports of fishermen at the San Luis Lake seeing fighter jets disappearing directly into the mountain. So there seems to be some sort of underground presence there. Very, very difficult to access this area. It's a wilderness area. There's no roads. Very, very rugged terrain. Extreme, relief there. I've done some hiking around in the area, but it's so vast and so huge and unspoiled that very few people actually are able to get back in there. And it wasn't until recently when the U.S. government appropriated some of the land there to incorporate into the new national park. The Great Sand Dunes used to be a national monument, and now it's a national park, and they've expanded the size and bought up some private land from the Nature Conservancy and other groups. So access is a little easier now, but there's no roads, and the trails that are there are extremely overgrown. Very few people attempt to hike in there. There's some mountain men make it in there. Some hunters may wander in the lower reaches of Sand Creek Canyon and in other areas, but it's very, very mysterious there. I had an abduction case in the late 80s that I researched a number of years later of 2 hunters that were abducted allegedly from that area. There's Bigfoot sightings that go all the way back to the 1880s, possibly to the 1870s in that area. There's accounts of like ghost Indians that show up and come screaming in the camp dressed in primitive clothing and waving spears and chasing people away from their campfires or attempting to. There's any number of reports of strange activity that's been reported over the years in the area, but one thing that's been a constant underlying theme is there's something or somebody or something inside that portion of the Sangres, which is where all thought, it's called Cisna or the place, the Black Sash Medicine Belt, the place where all thought originates in the Dene tradition, which is Navajo Apache. And again, you have that ant people thing that keeps popping up here and there, all in these areas like around Bandelier, just outside of Los Alamos. That's where the medicine societies of the Pueblo Indians say that their place of emergence is. And when the earth's going to cleanse itself, the medicine societies go there. And they're cared for during earth change periods by these diminutive beings that look like humanoid ants, for lack of a better description.
That is really strange, because if you imagine a humanoid ant, then you get, at least in my imagination right now, what looks like a gray. I mean, aside from all the legs, but if you stood an ant up on its two last legs, and he's standing up there looking at you, that could be what we think of today as the grays.
Well, I'm hot on a lead. I probably shouldn't even be talking about this, but many generations ago, when Chaco Canyon was raided by Indians for the lumber, long straight logs are pretty rare in the desert. So there have been, over the years, when Chaco was abandoned, Indians would go in and start pilfering the lumber. And one of the beams that was taken out of one of the kivas at Chaco was brought to Hopi, to the Hopi reservation, and it was placed as like a primary beam for the kiva, which is a representation of the place of emergence, which is a real travertine dome that's located on the Little Colorado River, just a few miles up from Grand Canyon, in a deep cavern, 4,500 feet deep, gorge that leads into Grand Canyon. And this travertine dome is about 70 feet in diameter, about 30 feet high. It looks like a giant anthill. It has a hole or an entrance on the top that's normally filled with water. When Creator decides it's time to cleanse the earth, the water drains out. People are given signs in the heavens on 4 consecutive nights. They all grab their stuff. They go there. They go down into the place of emergence. And that form, that travertine dome that you can see easily from Google Earth. If you just go to Google Earth, trace the route of the Little Colorado up about 3 miles from Grand Canyon, you can see it on the eastern shore. It's very visible. But that form is where we get the kiva, the sacred ceremonial room of the Pueblo Indians, the round underground room that they do their rituals in, pass along their knowledge. Each Kachina society, each medicine society has, in theory, their own kiva, and that's where they got the idea from the original place of emergence. Now, this beam was brought from Chaco and was placed as a structural component of one of the kivas at Hopi, and it was there for many generations. And then it started to dry rot, and it started to break, and so they were thinking, this was back, I forget the exact time, it's in the 50s, I think, or 40s, in the 20th century, the 1940s or 50s, they were going to replace it, and it cracked, and a mummified ant person remains came out of the log. It had been hidden inside the log, and there's somebody who I've been made aware of, Hopi gentleman, who wants to expose this and let the world have a look.
Well, you're very, very lucky then. Then you have earned some trust, because you're right. You shouldn't be talking about that. And
well, we'll see. It's really not. It's. I've been asked to become involved. He actually confided it in an investigator, researcher friend of mine who's got quite sterling credentials, I might add. Very low-key guy, very, very close friend, lives quite close to me, actually. And he's asked me if I want to get involved and document the story and get involved. And I probably shouldn't be talking about it, but this is the first tangible indication that we have physical evidence. I'm big on physical evidence. That's why, when I was here, in February, that's why I'm so really fascinated by the cattle mutilation phenomenon, the unexplained livestock death phenomenon, I prefer, because there's hundreds of pounds of physical evidence. And, something flashing in the sky, some light in the sky that doesn't conform to, conventional FAA traffic. I mean, that's important. I think it should be logged and investigated, but there's nothing like hard physical evidence. There's no substitute for that.
Well,
If there is something to this particular claim, I am going to be all over it like a bad case of prion disease.
Well, in the paranormal world, you're right. It's difficult to find a phenomena that has tangible evidence. I mean, this is what everybody is going for and looking for. And you're right. Stories about strange lights in the sky, they're great. I could do a whole open line show just on that. But to have
for months at a time.
Yeah, right. But to have something in your hand, actual evidence in your hand, especially of what lives underground out there.
And this thing does have, I think, 2 legs and 4 arms.
Really? Oh my God. Well, when you said that area out there doesn't have roads, the first thing I thought of, and you'll have to forgive me here, but the first thing I thought of was Bigfoot, Sasquatch. I mean, come on. If there are areas that humans don't go or can't go, then to me that's a possible area for cryptids, and Bigfoot comes to mind.
Yeah, and there have been quite a number of really good, fairly well documented, in my estimation, reports from that part of the Sangres.
Really?
Most of the reports come from the border, though, of San Antonio Mountain. That's where Bigfoot, supposedly, that's where Massa, the sergeant at arms, kind of the god of death, that's where he lives. And he lives in the lava tubes underneath the largest freestanding mountain in the world. And when he comes out, he's big, he's hairy, and he smells bad.
Sounds like Bigfoot to me.
Yeah, I had 7 reports in, I think, an 8-day period, 9-day period. In the end of December, beginning of January of 94 and 5, that were just amazing. There was one after another, right during a wave of incredible UFO activity. And the NORAD event had occurred, then occurred a week and a half, 2 weeks later, where the NORAD reported the few acre-sized heat plume that they were told, county authorities were told to launch, exhaust all efforts to find the source of it. And it turned out that it was probably some sort of downed craft or something. All this happened within a 2.5-week period.
You must have been hopping.
I was. And then I took a helicopter flight. One of my benefactors flew down from Denver in a 2-man helicopter and let me climb aboard with a video camera. And I spent the whole day flying around the valley, and I flew up Sand Creek Canyon, these areas.
Okay, he goes on and some interesting things, but that's the piece that I really wanted to share. Now I don't know what's showing on the screen here. I don't know if this is a real skull of an alien or it's a fake one or what. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the ant people, but that's what they show through the whole video. And that's not really the most, shall I say, incredible part to me of the video. I don't know if incredible is the right word to use either, because all of these things are natural. They're just outside the scope of our current understanding. Excuse me. I'm going to have to pause for a moment. I'm so sorry about that. And there's no way to cut it out of this video. I'd have to start all over again because I'm using Zoomcast. So apologies for the choking there. But what I was saying was, it's all natural phenomena. It's just that we don't understand all of it. But in regard to the ant people, Thoth has indicated many years ago that this is a conglomerate story. The true ant people are inner earth beings, and they don't look like ants or grays. But there are a lot of different species of beings left over from star relations with Davic beings and humanoids and all of this that occupy different little crevices, shall we say, pockets within the subterranean lands, not the inner earth. And some of those have aided native beings. So the ant people are a combination of those beings that, of course, were very impressive to them. And later, when some of the tribes of the earth went into the inner earth, of course, then they were brought through by the human types. So it's a mixture of stories there. But the part really that I found the most interesting was not that. I included that in this little excerpt because it is interesting, but the main part is about the geologic energies here, and also that it is considered a node where the font of all understanding, I may be misquoting it slightly, but that's what it really means, is accessible. And I think that is because this area is one of those areas that retains the original Akashic imprint. So one can more directly access that font of all knowledge in such an area. You know, there's Tibet, there's some areas in Tibet. You know, there are other areas, but they're rare. And this one is very prominent to hold that capacity. It's a very direct capacity for receipt. So anyway, I guess this concludes my little video presentation here. I had really just wanted to post this, but it's so long, and this is the part that has, to me, the most important message concerning the San Luis Valley itself.